going on, Redemption? I am so glad that you're joining us for our last week of the Portable Parables series. It's been a great series. We're so glad that you've joined us. If you missed any, you can go to our YouTube page and catch up on all of them. But we're glad that you're here today. If you're joining us for the very first time, be sure to like the comment in the comment section that says, I'm joining for the first time, because we would love to connect with you. We would love to reach out to you and send you a gift, just as our way of saying thank you for being here today. So be sure to do that. Also, check out our digital bulletin. Our digital bulletin is packed with information about everything that's going on around Redemption. It includes more information than you even get in the announcement. So be sure to go check that out so you don't miss out on anything. Redemption, we also have a class coming up in just a couple of weeks called The Art of Neighboring. You are not going to want to miss this class. When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment in the whole Bible? He said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. What if Jesus meant for that to include our actual neighbors, the people living next door or across the street from us? That's what we're going to be exploring in this class. The reality is, many of us don't know our neighbors. We don't know their names. We don't know anything about them. How do we get to know them? How do we meet them? How do we connect with them and invest in them so that we can fulfill the command that Jesus said was so important, to love our neighbors? So that's what we're going to be doing in this class. It's a 3-week class, loosely following a book called The Art of Neighboring, which if you want to read that with us, we would love for you to do that. It's not required for the class, but it's a great read, so we would really encourage you to. But regardless, join this class, be a part of it. As a community, we want to be a people who love our actual neighbors. So be sure to register at our website, redemptionstl.com. Finally, Redemption, you have been so generous over these last couple of months, and because you've been generous, we've been able to be generous with others, and we're so grateful for that. Now, here at Redemption, we talk about something called the giving journey and growing in our giving journey. And that means if you're not giving anything at all right now, your next step might just be to give something, anything. That's your next step, and we want to challenge you to take it. If you are giving but spontaneously, then we challenge you to give consistently. If you're giving consistently, then our challenge to you is to give extravagantly, sacrificially. Wherever you are in your giving journey, we want to challenge you just to take the next step of obedience and trust in God when it comes to your money. So Redemption, once again, just thank you for your generosity. As I said, we've been able to serve so many people in need these last couple of months because of you. We've been able to send money outside the walls, if you will, the community of Redemption because of you. And we're so grateful for this generous group of people that God has brought together at Redemption. So we're glad that you're joining us. Again, if you missed any of the messages from this series, you can check it out on our YouTube page. You're not going to want to miss any of them, but we are so glad that you are here today. Thank you, Redemption.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And all the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So good, show us who you are. Spirit, move in us. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. You're coming. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, there's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. All the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And all it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And all the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yes. So good, so good. And all the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And all it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And all the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
What's going on, Redemption? My name is Corey Ball. I'm the lead pastor here at Redemption Community Church. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey, I wanted to say that this is our last week of the Portable Parables series. This is week 4, the last week of this series. Next week, we're going to begin a series called The Third Way, a series on race relations. And I, for one, am really excited about this series. You may think like, man, this is going to be a hard topic for a leader to preach on. No. It may be hard to hear some things, but I'm excited to preach on this topic. If you're wondering what exactly is this series, how is this series going to go? Is it going to lean left or is it going to lean right? Well, this is the whole point of the series. See, often Jesus, he was confronted with these topics of his day, and the Pharisees typically would confront him and go, Jesus, are you left or are you right? Today they might say, Jesus, are you Democrat or are you Republican? Are you with the donkeys or the elephants, right? And Jesus inevitably would say, I'm with neither. There's a third way, a way that you don't understand yet, a way called the kingdom of God. And that's my way. Follow me and you'll find it. And we want to unpack what we believe. If Jesus were here today, how would he confront race in America? How would he confront the issue of this or that? So we invite you to first check out the full discussion on that video. It's going to be linked in the comments section, okay? And secondly, send that video to someone that you know, all right? Invite them into this sermon series. We're not shying away from the topic. We really want people to hear the words of Jesus. And then secondly, we want you to invite those people by actually getting a digital invite to be able to text to your friends, and that's just going to be kind of like an Instagram story screen, right? A screenshot. And so text invite to 314-391-4141, and we will text you that image, and you can just send that to some friends and just invite them. That's it. So invite to 314-391-4141. That's the number there on the screen for questions. And also, if you have any questions, let us know, because we want to answer them. So I could go on and on about that sermon series, but I'm going to save it for the sermon series next week. And we're going to go into this week's sermon, the last sermon in the Portable Parables series. Well, I decided to plant a church 2.5 years before we actually launched Redemption Community Church on January 26th of 2020. So for 2.5 years, I was working toward planting this church, and the leading reason for me planting this church, I believe, was a holy one. And I just believe that God was calling me to plant the church, very simply. It's a crazy thing. It's very unique. It hasn't happened like this at other times in my life. But I spent 3 months going to God and praying, God, are you calling me to plant a church? And it was really clear. God gave me that answer. In fact, the way he gave me that answer is without me talking to anyone about it, outside of my wife and of like 2 or 3 other people. 13 people who had no clue I was praying about this came up to me individually at separate times over the course of 3 months and said, Corey, you should be a lead pastor. Or they said, Corey, you should plant a church. Or they said, Corey, if you ever started a church, I would be there. I mean, it was incredible. And so what they were saying, what they were doing was confirming God's calling in my life, and they didn't even realize it. So that's the main reason, right? And that's a holy reason. God confirmed that. But here's the other reality. The other reality is that there were some unholy reasons that I decided to plant a church. That's right. If you didn't know this, I'm human. Yeah, I am, really. And if all of your dreams just got shattered because you realize that your pastor is human, let us know if you need grief counseling. We have funds set aside and we'll help you out with that. We'll even recommend a counselor. But yeah, I'm human. And so I had these unholy reasons to plant a church. And where did these unholy reasons come from? Well, they came from me being in church. See, my entire life I've been in the church. I grew up in the church. My parents are Christ followers. And so, that old joke, that old adage I was passed around with the offering plate, I was there from day one. And what I saw over the course of at the time, my 29, 30 years, was that the bottom line is churches don't always look the way they should. And so I started to see these things that many churches in America weren't doing. And I believe this. I believe that I could do it better. I mean, I really did. My pride was one of those unholy reasons. And still today, there are times that I struggle with judging how other leaders are leading. And I'm sure you can understand that that's a reality for you in your current field of employment. But that temptation is there for pastors as well. Again, I hate to break it to you, but I'm human. So I'm working through those things, but that's the unholy reason, that really got to me. And I believe this. I believe that if you grew up in a church, you would see that the church is often abundant in things it should not be abundant in, and it's lacking in things that it shouldn't be lacking in. Let me give you some examples. The church is often abundant in hypocrites, but it should be abundant in repenting sinners. Okay, now listen. What's the difference between a hypocrite and a repenting sinner? Honesty. That's it. That's the only thing. That's the only difference. The repenting sinner is honest with themselves, that they are a sinner, and they're honest with others about their sin. They don't try to hide it. They just know that they're human, right? They know that they're a sinner in need of a savior. So churches are often abundant in hypocrites, but they should be abundant in repenting sinners. Churches in America, they're often abundant in inward cliques and clubs, but those churches should be abundantly present in the community. Churches, they're often or typically only abundant in saved saints, right? People who have been in the church their entire life. But they should be abundant in lost sinners also. Lost sinners in search of God's grace. So after years of being raised in the church and living in the church, I saw this disconnect, right? Where Jesus' ministry was full of certain things, right? It was abundant in certain things that weren't abundant in the church. And that Jesus' ministry was lacking in certain things that are actually abundant in the church. And so I saw this disconnect, and I started to think, like, what would a biblical church, in my eyes, what would a biblical church look like? And this desire to plant this church started to bubble up inside of me. And why did I not walk away from the church? Why did I decide, hey, I'm going to go a step further. I'm actually going to start a church. Why didn't I walk away from the church? Because this quote, I think it kind of embodies my feelings. Now, just so before I even give the quote's misattributed to Augustine. And it's not from Augustine. In fact, it's kind of a caricature of some things that he said. Tony Campolo, back in 2006, wrote a book, and he kind of characterizes the words of Augustine as if he said these things, but he didn't. Anyway, but the quote from the book, Letter to a Young Pastor, from Tony Campolo in 2006, it said this: "The church is a whore, but she is our mother." The church is a whore, but she is our mother. And I think this kind of sums up for me this idea of, what does it mean to not leave mom? Well, what does it mean to not leave our mother in all of her imperfections? How do we love her well and present her well? And so I've stayed in the church, and I've wished to see a church planted that really looked more like the ministries of Christ. I wanted to see a church that is abundant in repentant sinners, a church that is abundantly present in the community, a church that is abundant in lost sinners still in search of God's grace. And this is redemption. This is the church that we are working to build. I heard a pastor in Las Vegas, his name is Jud Wilhite. I heard him speak one time at a conference, and he shared this story about a family that went to his church. It's called Central Church, and to give you some context, their church is in Las Vegas, and so he pastors a church in Las Vegas. And what's crazy is that the church in Las Vegas, his church, is present. It's filled. It has the presence of the same type of sinners that were often present around Jesus in his day, and that's prostitutes. And it's crazy to think that humanity over 2,000 years hasn't really changed a whole lot sometimes. Well, Jud Wilhite, his church, they really connect well to the ladies of the night, you know? And so all these women, they're coming to hear about the life change that Jesus can offer them. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's an awesome thing, amazing thing. And this family, kind of a Stepford Wives, type of family, very prim and proper, and they came to Judd one day. They said after service, they said, "Pastor Judd, we need to speak with you." So I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. What's going on?" And they said, "We just want to let you know that today is going to be our last Sunday." And Pastor Judd said, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Is there anything we can do to keep you? Is there anything? I mean, what led to this? What's wrong?" They said this. The father, he said, "Well, we're just not sure anymore of what disease we're going to contract after we sit down in the seats that they have sat in." And he pointed over at a group of women. And Pastor Judd said this. He said, "I understand. Let me welcome you out the door." Let me welcome you out the door. Ooh, I hope I never have to say that to any of you. But he said, "Let me welcome you out the door." Because here, we are going to be a church that seeks and saves the lost. And so Pastor Judd, he probably had the same response that Jesus would have had to the Pharisees in Jesus' day, right? Jesus wasn't always the most friendly to the Pharisees, and Pastor Judd wasn't super friendly to that family. He welcomes them out the door. And the story made me think of this, like, how would Jesus have responded in that moment? Friends, my question is, if this church was pastored by Jesus, would you attend? I don't know that I would attend sometimes, because the way of Jesus is often hard. It's muddied. It's not cut and dry. It's not left and right. It's not black and white. It's not easy. If Jesus pastored this church, would we attend? Today is the last week of the Portable Parables series. We're in this week 4, the final week, and we're going to be looking at probably the most popular parable of all time, the most well-known parable of all time, and that's the parable of the lost son. As we look at that, we're going to turn to Luke chapter 15. That's where we're going to find it. You can open up in your physical Bibles or open up on an app, but let's follow together on Luke chapter 15. As we get there, as we turn there in our Bibles, I want to say this, that we have to remember a parable is a short story with everyday people, places, and things, right? It uses everyday people, places, and things to communicate a profound truth. Some would say that a parable is an untrue story used to communicate something that is true. It's an untrue story used to communicate something that is true. I love that. And this story, we have to know that this isn't just a story, a tale of two brothers, but this really, it's a story about two misbehaviors. It's not a story about a behavior and a misbehavior. No, it's two misbehaviors. It's the story. It's this tale of two sinners. It's the story of the prodigal son and the Pharisee son. Right? The prodigal and the Pharisee. So we're going to jump in. We're going to go to Luke chapter 15, and I'm going to start reading in verse 1. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. So Jesus told them this story. So first off, I love the fact that it says that these tax collectors and notorious sinners were they were always there, right? I mean, like, imagine this. If we were meeting physically together as a church, it would be like the first 2 or 3 rows were all notorious sinners. They were all the people in our community that are the worst of the worst of the worst. And then it's the rest of, the people. And so I love the fact that these people, they often came to hear Jesus preach, and we can't really grasp that. Like, these people, they weren't there so that they could obey Jesus. They weren't there to have another Bible study and belabor how they can, creatively obey Jesus and still stay as comfortable as they can. That's not what they were trying to do. Rather, they were just going, hey, this guy has life exuding from him. Like, he's different. I'm intrigued, right? And so they surround him, they listen to his teaching, and listen, this is what I love about Jesus' ministry and his example to us at Redemption, because many churches in America, you have to behave right before you enter. Then you have to believe the right things. And if you do those two things, if you satisfy those two things, then you can belong. But that wasn't Jesus' ministry, and that's not Redemption as a church. Here, you find a place to belong from day one. And then, over time, you might believe what we believe, maybe. And then your behavior might change. But if you never believe what we believe, and if your behavior never changes, you'll always have a place to belong. This was the ministry of Jesus. Jesus offered a place to belong to all the sinners, right? The ones that really couldn't stand his environment, right? The ones that were kind of expelled, the ones that received the harsh words were the religious people, the self-righteous people, right? Remember, self-righteousness is judging others because they sin differently than you do. We're all human, we're all broken. But what happens is that Jesus, he was surrounded by these notorious sinners and he loved them. He went toward them, and often the Pharisees received harsh words and kind of scattered. Well, many scholars believe that this chapter is actually Jesus' defense of his ministry. I mean, you'll notice in those first two verses there that this made the Pharisees, the teachers of religious law, complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. What? Jesus, are you kidding me? Right? Okay, so Jesus is going, hey, I'm going to tell you a story. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to defend my ministry. I'm going to prove to you why what I'm doing is biblical and it's of my Father. It's of God. And so his ministry really, it was to find that which was lost, right? It was to find the broken, the ones who were falling away, who never knew God, and pump life into them. That was his ministry. It was to seek and save the lost. It was his ministry was to rescue people from the flames of hell. That's the ministry of redemption. That's what we want to do. But hear me. If you're rescuing people from a fire, you often smell like what? Smoke, right? You do. You smell like smoke. And I promise you this, redemption isn't always going to be the easiest place to go to church. It's not always going to be a cut and dry place. Jesus' ministry wasn't, and so we can't have a church like that either. I think Jesus often smelled like smoke. People wondered a lot of times, wait, Jesus, are you a notorious sinner like them, right? Or are you a saint? They wanted to know these things. In fact, in Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says this, verses 18 and 19. For John didn't spend his time eating and drinking. This is talking about John the Baptist. For he didn't spend his time eating and drinking. And you say he was possessed by a demon. The Son of Man, meaning himself, on the other hand, feasts and drinks, and you say he's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and other sinners. Well, these Matthew verses, they prove this. You can never make happy the self-righteous, right? You can never make them happy because you will never fit inside of their crooked standards. Jesus wasn't concerned with making the self-righteous happy, but you see this. Jesus smelled like smoke. People thought he was a drunk. They thought that he was a glutton. They thought, that he was doing all these things. And listen, that was just after Jesus had a meal with the tax collectors and notorious sinners. Can you imagine what people said about him after he hung out with the prostitutes? Do you see this? Like, that is scandalous and controversial, right? At Redemption. It's not always going to be the easiest road to haul. It's not always going to be the easiest church to attend. But it wasn't that easy to hang out around Jesus. So, listen, if you're upset at times down the road that redemption smells like smoke, if you're upset because some of the self-righteous in the community say something about this church, and you come to me and you go, hey, I have some other friends, they're Christians, and they were questioning this and they were wondering, blah, blah, blah. I might respond the way that Jesus responded in verse 3. So Jesus told them a story. Okay, so he actually tells them two stories at first before we get to the story that we're going to get to. The very first story, this very first parable, is about a shepherd, and the shepherd has 99 sheep. And one of them goes away, right? Well, what does Jesus do? He leaves the 99, right? He leaves the 99 sheep and he goes after the one sheep at that time that matters the most. He wants to rescue that sheep and he stops everything that he was doing to go after that one sheep that is now gone, that is lost. He wants to find that one sheep. He wants to make sure that sheep is safe. So he leaves the 99, he goes after the one. And Jesus asked this question, like, wouldn't a shepherd do this, right? He would leave the 99, he would go after the one. And what's crazy is you have like those who agree with Jesus, like, and those who disagree with Jesus. You have the sinners and you have the Pharisees and you have all these people. And Jesus goes, wouldn't he do that? And they're all like, oh, yeah, yes, he would. And they all start to think, this is suspect, right? Like Jesus is coaxing us into something because we never agree on anything. And so you have tax collectors, and there could be prostitutes there, and you have notorious sinners. That's probably the prostitutes, right? Notorious sinners. And you have all this, and then you have the Pharisees, and they're all like, yeah, he would leave the 99. He would go after the one. Jesus continues. Okay, and then when he finds that one, and that one sheep is safe and sound, what does he do? And what does he do? He parties. He throws a big party, right? Okay, so then Jesus goes to the second parable. And when he goes to the second parable, he says, hey, there's this woman, and she has 10 coins. In fact, they're called drachmas, and a drachma is worth a day's wage for most people then. She had 10 coins. Well, she lost one of the drachmas in the middle of the night, by the way, which is kind of a weird thing. Sometimes Jesus' stories, I'm like, Jesus, I don't really understand that. Don't know why it has to be middle of the night. But it's middle of the night. And Jesus goes, wouldn't she stop, light a lamp, sweep the house to find that drachma, right? What he's saying is, wouldn't she pause her life? Wouldn't she pause her rest until that one coin is found? Wouldn't she do that? They're all like, yeah, she would, because it's that important, right? And Jesus goes, and when she finds it, she's going to call her neighbors over to celebrate with her, aka she gonna party, okay? Now, that's a crazy thing, by the way, like middle of the night. I don't care if you guys like lost $100, or like whatever, and you call me up and you're like, Corey, come over to my house, lost $100, found it, let's party. I'm not coming over to your house, okay? Like, just so you know, don't call me for that. Just tell me about it next week. And anyway, so they do, right? They party. And so then Jesus sets up this third parable. And in this third parable, it is not about a, dumb, replaceable animal, right? It's not. It's not about a lost wage that could have been recouped. It's about a lost relationship between a Jewish father and his son. Okay, so he continues in verse 11. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now, before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Translation, I wish you were already dead, Dad. This is my last Thanksgiving with you. I'm no longer passing the gravy boat, okay? We're done. Like, give me my money and let's just end this thing today. This is what the son was saying. He was effectively wishing his father dead. And so the dad, he splits the estate 2 ways, 50-50, right? 50%, 50%. Pay attention to that, okay? The one boy, he gets 50%. So I'm going to sum up the next 4 verses. Essentially what happens is the prodigal son, he leaves with dad's inheritance. He goes to a distant land. And why does he go to a distant land? Why does he go to this far away land? Because he wants to live how he wants to live without the judgment or the eyes of anyone else. He doesn't want any accountability in his life. The son is in fact in search of 2 things in this distant land. He's in search of anonymity and autonomy. And hear me, Listen, the two things that will fuel your secret sins, the secret life that you might live, the two things that will fuel that are anonymity, right? Anonymity. This idea of being hidden, right? Being separated, in autonomy. This idea of self-rule without any accountability. Just like a weed needs sun and water to grow and become unruly, your secret life of sin needs anonymity and autonomy to overtake you. Beware of this. So in this parable, this son, he goes after this privacy, this secrecy, this self-rule without any accountability, the anonymity, the autonomy. The younger brother, he buys into this lifestyle that he couldn't keep up. He was trying to keep up with the Joneses. He was trying to party. The Greek word here, it could be this lavish lifestyle, that really financially he just couldn't keep up with, but it could also mean, debaucherous and full of parties. We don't really know what Jesus is saying here, but he's saying that he has this crazy lifestyle. Well, he ends up running out of money. He goes broke. And so he begs a nearby farmer, please let me work in your field and let me just feed the pigs, which is crazy. See, Jesus was talking to this group of people that had Jewish roots. If they weren't Jewish themselves, they knew of the Jewish culture, and they knew this, that a Jewish boy should not even touch a pig. And yet this boy is going, please let me feed your pigs. Jewish people didn't eat pigs. They didn't touch pigs, right? It was an unclean animal. And this boy is going to eat the food fed to the pigs. He starts lusting over this food that he's giving to the pigs, and he's desiring this. His stomach is growling. He's hungry. And then he has this eureka moment. He goes, aha, my father's hired hands eat better than I am right now. They are treated better than I am treated right now. So I'm going to leave. I'm going to return to my father, and I'm going to tell him that I've sinned. All right, we're going to pick up in verse 18. He says, I will go home to my father, and I'll say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to the father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming and filled with... See, as we read this story, we might think like, man, the dad, he's heard the rumors, I'm sure, of what his son was doing. The dad, basically the son already told the dad, I wish you were dead. Thanksgiving is over. I'm definitely not coming over to Christmas, bro. Like, I'm taking my money, hitting the road. You and me, we're done. You should be dead, right? You're dead to me. Why don't you just die already? Give me your money. Now, as a father, if your son did that to you, when you see him coming to you a long way off, you're probably filled with what? Anger, most likely. But what is the father filled with? Filled with love and compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. See, the son, he goes to the father with his head down in shame. The father sees him on the horizon. He runs to him, right? He runs to him. And though the son is covered in pig excrement, the father, he doesn't worry about that. He doesn't worry about that. He throws his arms around him. He welcomes him. He brings him in, right? He smells like smoke, right? I mean, figuratively. The father smells like smoke or pig excrement. And at redemption, we'll smell like smoke from time to time. We'll smell like pig excrement from time to time. And this father, he was okay smelling like this farm fresh mix of pig poop and mud. Because it meant what? It meant that what was lost is now found. So the kid, he says this. He says, I have sinned against you. I love this. Because he's saying, I've sinned against you. Not, I've oopsed against you. I oopsed against you, Dad, right? I no-noed against you. Man, no, sir, right? I no-sir'd against you. Not even, I screwed up against you. Man, I screwed up. I just screwed up. No. I sinned against you. He owned it. And we need to take note from this kid. Okay, so verses 22 through 27 basically say this. It says that this father, he starts the preparation for a rager. He's going to throw a party, okay? So he gets his party ready. Everybody's eating steak. And actually, it's not even steak. It's veal because they're killing the fatted calf, okay? Everyone's going to get veal, okay? A big deal. And then the father, he starts with the wardrobe, like he wants to get his son some fresh drip, right? And so he gets him the freshest kicks, the coolest robe around. He gets ice all on his wrists and his fingers and his neck. Like the dude is all of a sudden, he's super tricked out, okay? If you don't know what that means, neither do I. I just looked it up on the internet. Okay, so anyway, he takes care of his wardrobe. He makes him look good. He makes him look fresh, right? And it's kind of a weird setup. This older son, he's actually off in the distance on another part of the land. Now, this is a crazy thing. I mean, it's a figurative story. So in this figurative story, this untrue story that Jesus is telling, this estate must have been huge, okay? Because all of this is happening and the older brother has no clue. He's none the wiser. And so the younger brother, he's there and this rager of a party's getting ready to start. He's all tricked out, looking fresh. All the girls are like, man, he's a snack. He's looking good, And his older brother is like, what's going on? So his older brother starts walking back to the house, to Dad's house, and he kind of confronts this guy. And the first question is essentially like, what the heck is going on? What's going on in Dad's house? They say, well, your younger brother, he's come home. He's home. How does the older brother respond? Well, he's in shock, but more than shock. Verse 28, the older brother was angry and he wouldn't go in. Could you imagine? Could you imagine being the father and the younger brother is going, hey, I'm not deserving of your love, Dad. I'm unworthy. I'm not deserving of this. And you're going, please just come into the party. And the older brother goes, yeah, Dad, he's right. He isn't deserving. And if he's going to be there, I'm not going in. Okay, Dad? And Dad's sitting there going, boys, please. Like, I just want to throw a celebration. That which was lost is now found. I just want to celebrate. Verse 28, we're going to continue.
His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I have slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing that you've told me to. Like, this self-righteousness, it runs deep, right? Like, there is a history here of his self-perceived perfection. And in all that time, you never even gave me a goat. This is the best. And in all that time, you never even gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours, I love this. This is like the best, right? This is drama. This has nothing on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Could you imagine like being a bystander, in the club watching this? Sorry, too much slang right now. I'm over here like talking about drip and ice and clubs. But could you imagine being a bystander watching this? This son of yours, like, the brother's mad when he doesn't even claim a relationship with his brother, right? It's not like my brother, it's this son of yours, and you all know this, right? Jesus was onto something. He knew this, like the whole idea of not claiming a relationship when someone else has done wrong. It's not a new one, and this happens to you as parents, especially when you have a little rotten boy, And Dad comes home and Mom says, do you want to know what your son did today? Right? And this is what Jesus is saying here in this story. Like the older brother's like, this son of yours. Okay. So verse 30. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, Yeah, Dad, prostitutes. Like, I wasn't going to say anything, but I heard from George. We were out in the vineyard and he was telling me he heard some things. Okay. Like, this dude, prostitutes. Yeah. I'm not going to tell Mom. Okay. But I think you need to know I've only bought Bibles with the money that you've ever given me. But your son, he's over here buying prostitutes. Okay. Dad, just so you need to know that. All right. Even after spending all of your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fatted calf? Some of you that are hearing the story, you're identifying with the younger brother. And we're going to talk to you. Actually, in fact, I'm going to end talking to you. But for many of you, you're identifying with the older brother. And odds are, you are really an angry Christian. Why? Why are you an angry Christian? Because you think that you deserve something from God that someone else might get. You think you deserve something from God that someone else might get. You can't be happy when someone else who seems less righteous than you is blessed by God in a way that you believe you're entitled to. You would be really happy if the parable ended like this. And the son, the younger son, he lived the rest of his life in the pig pen, feeding the pigs. Period. Parable over. You would be really excited to hear that, right? For some of you, you like the idea of hell because you just can't wait for people to get what's coming to them. But here's the problem. That's not Jesus. That's not Christianity. And that's not the God of the New Testament. People talk about, there's a difference between the God of the Old Testament, God of the New Testament. No. Same God. Okay, if you want to talk about that, let's talk. You know the first time that God ever describes himself? It takes him, by the way, like 70 chapters to do so. But once he does, he describes himself by saying this, that like, I'm slow to anger. I'm abounding in love and mercy. I forgive the sins of generations on and on and on. And I'm long suffering. I mean, he says like 5 or 6 things of like, I'm loving, I'm compassionate. I give mercy. I give second chances. I'm benevolent. And then he ends with this, but surely I will not let the guilty go unpunished. See, Jesus is the full embodiment of grace and truth, but here's what we have to understand, that he's not really a balance. And we think that everything with Christianity, with God, has to be balanced. I don't think it is. Because balance would be a lot less mercy and a lot less love than Jesus actually embodies. There isn't balance, but there's tension. Right? And it's perfectly held. You can create churches based off of the idea of hell and just the excitement of people finally getting theirs. You can create political systems off of that. But you can't live the way of Jesus by believing that. Jesus doesn't side with the older brother here. Remember when I started this sermon, I said this. I said the parable is about 2 sinners. It's about the prodigal and the Pharisee. Identify which one you are, and let's continue. Let's see how the father responds. Verse 31. His father said to him, "Look, dear son," older son, right? He's talking to the older son. "Dear older son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. Everything I have left, aka 50%, you're entitled to it. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and now he is found." And the father, he's saying, don't you get it? He is now with me. And so are you. You've always been with me. But now that which was lost is now found. That's what mattered the entire time. The presence of my children with me. The bottom line is this. Just because something is lost doesn't mean it's lost its value. Just because something is lost doesn't mean it's lost its value. Some of you who are listening to this, you've identified the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. You've identified with the young son who declared to his dad that he's worthless and that he isn't even worthy of being called his son, right, anymore. He's not even worthy of that. Check it. If I took this $20 bill right here, okay? If I took this bill and I crumpled it up, okay? And then I take the bill and let's say like I rip a corner off, okay? And I take that corner and I tape it on. I take this $20 bill, put some Sharpie on it there, right over his face. Though this $20 bill, though it's been marked up and ripped, though it's crumpled, it hasn't lost its value. It's still worth it. It still has value. Why? Not because the $20 bill decides that it's valuable. Not because what the $20 bill says or doesn't say about itself. The $20 bill keeps its value because an organization greater than itself called the United States of America printed on the $20 bill its ascribed value. And God has ascribed value to you. And it doesn't matter if you've been crumpled up. It doesn't matter if you have marks on you. It doesn't matter if you've been used by other people and passed through so many hands. It doesn't matter what you think about yourself. It doesn't matter what you say about yourself. You are valuable whether you're lost or found because God has ascribed value to you. And God will stop at nothing to find you. Like the shepherd leaves the 99 to find the one, like the woman in the middle of the night that leaves the 9 drachmas to find the one, like the father who is begging and waiting for his son to come home. He's waiting for you to come home. And just because you're lost, it doesn't mean that you have lost your value. I began this sermon saying this. I said that I have a few scratching posts with the church as a whole. And one of the things that upsets me to the core of the pastor that I am is this, that churches rarely ascribe the same value to the lost things of this world that Jesus ascribed to them. You don't believe me? I'll prove it. Look at how many hours most American churches spend with those who already believe like them, agree with them, think like them on Sunday morning at church. And then how many hours do most American churches spend in the community looking after the lost, going after the lost things of this world? Now, I understand we're in COVID, not nobody's out really in the community, but think pre-COVID, think normal rhythms. Okay, let's continue. In most American churches, how many ministries primarily center around really uplifting and encouraging the believer, the older son often, the Pharisaical son, kind of belaboring the fact that God really does love you and pontificating over what you should be doing as a Christ follower. And again, like what you should be doing as a Christ follower and still be as little, or experience as little awkwardness and do, as little as possible and remain as comfortable as possible. That's often what Bible studies become. Okay, so there's a lot of belaboring, pontificating, all those things. And how many ministries primarily center around bringing the story of Jesus to a lost and broken world, to the lost people of this world? Do you know why churches are so disproportionately structured and programmed? They are so because we fail to ascribe the same value to the lost as Jesus did. That's why. If we believed that the lost were as valuable as the lost sheep, the lost drachma, the lost son, our churches would look different. Collectively, our churches would look different. At Redemption, we work not to do church the way that most churches in America would do so. We work not to do church in a balanced way. We work to be imbalanced because we believe that Jesus gave a disproportionate amount of time to the lost that he was around. And so we want to be a church that doesn't hold balance. We want to be a church that edifies the believer, absolutely, but spends a disproportionate amount of time going after the lost in our community and telling them about the life that Jesus has for them. We want to be surrounded by people that aren't really here necessarily to obey Jesus, but they're here to learn more about the life that Jesus offers. That's what we want redemption to look like. And that leads me to this, to inviting those who are lost to the Father. If you are still watching this and you've identified with the younger son this entire time, come home. Come home. Leave where you are, the distant land. Walk away from the anonymity and the autonomy. Come home. Our Father, God, right? He's killed the fatted calf for you. By the way, there's a connection to Jesus there, right? Like there's a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice that has been made. It's hard for me to get into it now, and maybe that creeps you out a little bit. If it does, let's talk. But Scripture says that any time that there's going to be salvation, any time that there's going to be life, there has to be life given for life given, or there has to be life taken for life given. And so he's killed the fatted calf for you. Jesus died on a cross years ago with you in mind, with me in mind. Jesus, God, he's given you a new wardrobe, a new life. Romans talks about taking off the old ways, the old wardrobe, the old robe of darkness and putting on clothes of light. He's offering you a new wardrobe. The party is ready. And the only thing that's missing is you. So leave Vegas. Leave the pig pen. Come out with the pig excrement on you, with the stench on you, with everything. Come home and don't worry about cleaning yourself first. The boy didn't, right? We don't have to. God does that for us. He will clean you, okay? All you have to do is come home. The party's ready, and we're just missing you. If you want to follow Jesus, if you're ready to turn your life over to the God who has sought to save you, the God who came to earth looking for you, to love you, to give his life for you, eventually to die on a cross for you, and then he rose from the grave. That's the Easter story. That's what we celebrate as Christians every year. If you want to follow that Jesus, then pray these words after me. Jesus, I believe in you. I believe you are God, and I believe you love me. I believe I am valuable because you say I am. I believe you died for me. I believe you resurrected from the dead in order to save me. I am ready to surrender my life to you. I am ready to leave the pig pen. I'm ready to come home. I'm ready to follow you. Thank you for saving me. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, here's the deal. Scripture says, Romans chapter 10, 9 and 10, it says that if we believe in our heart, confess openly with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and that he rose from the grave, you will be saved. And we believe that that is salvation, that you will be saved. Don't do this alone, okay? Do us a favor and in the comments section, type yes. If you just decided to follow Jesus, type yes in the comment section, because as Christ followers, as believers, we want to come alongside you. We want to walk with you, and we want to teach you what does it mean to live in the Father's house. I believe that this young son, as he returned home, he probably had to relive a couple things, right? Can't have prostitutes over anymore. Can't get wasted anymore. Can't go gambling and do these things anymore. That's not to say there's no fun in Christianity. There's a lot of fun. My life's great. I have a lot of fun. If you know me, you know. But our life looks different. All right, we have to learn what does it look like to live in the Father's house again. And so, if that's you, let us know. Okay, type yes in the comment section. If that's too much for you, then DM us. but message us. Let us know, because we want to come alongside you and see you follow Jesus. So thanks so much for being with us today, Redemption. We are so thankful every week that you join us. And next week we start the Third Way series. I'm so excited about it. It's going to be awesome. Again, invite your friends. All right, like let's get as many people watching this sermon series as possible, because I think people are really going to find hope and truth in this series. All right, Redemption, we love you, and we will see you throughout the week.